Good morning, all, depending when you're watching this. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I am showing you every Dialga ever. You're probably thinking, oh, you might admit, no. Every Dialga ever. Some of them really format-definingly good. Some of them pretty playable. Some of them downright terrible. But ladies and gentlemen, I would feel like a terrible fraud if I did not show you every Dialga ever and show you whether they were good or not. Now, the first ever Dialga came around in May 2007 in the Diamond and Pearl expansion. And it was interesting enough. 1 energy, 10 damage, 3 energy, 40 damage. Return all energy cards attached to Dialga to your hand. Remove the highest stage evolution from the defending Pokemon and shuffle it into your opponent's deck. Especially fun if it was a stage 2 and they'd use a rare candy to evolve it up. It's fine. It wasn't particularly exciting. It wasn't a terribly inspiring card. That did not stop it being reprinted in Great Encounters in February 2008, and as a McDonald's promo in Japan, unfortunately featuring artwork that we never saw again, and as Diamond and Pearl promo 26 in the Dialga Premium box. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently this card was good enough that it got 4 different artworks. But also in Great Encounters, we saw Dialga Level X. Now, this was, to put it bluntly, the bad Dialga Level X. There was a different one we'll get to in a minute. Now, it did have a really nice Poké Power, think ability, time skip. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may have your opponent flip 2 coins. If both of them are heads, your turn ends. If both of them are tails, your opponent draws a card, and that's all they do for their turn. And then if there's 1 heads, 1 tails, nothing happens. Talk about a risky ability. Although if you're going to lose a game in a couple of turns guaranteed, it's a nice Hail Mary play. And then 4 energy, 80 damage, can't use it the next turn. Not particularly great. Though it was reprinted as a promo card in the 2008 Spring Collector's Tins. And apparently that wasn't enough because it was also printed as a promo card in the 2009 Spring Collector's Tins. So the first Dialga ever released actually got 4 different artworks, and then a Level X comes out which gets 3 different prints. Hey ho. Moving on, there was a Dialga release in Majestic Dawn in May 2008, which had a held item. Some Pokemon back then did. It was very cool. Adamant Orb meant that if Pokemon had weakness to metal, then Dialga did 20 more damage, which is fair enough. 1 energy, draw cards until you got 6 in your hands. Not a bad little draw card, although it never really saw a huge amount of play because it came out in Majestic Dawn. And also in Majestic Dawn, we had Chatot. And unfortunately, Chatot was just like a million times better, unfortunately. Little bit sad, ladies and gentlemen, but it had free retreat and did a very similar thing for 0 energy. It was a better draw card. 4 energy, 60 damage, flip a coin. If heads, it does 80. Unfortunately, just didn't do enough. And the next Dialga released was actually a Japan-only release. It was Dialga M that came up in July 2008 and came in the movie commemorative pack for the Arceus movie. This was kind of a promotional movie card, the kind of card that gets released in Japan and then never actually makes its way over here, unfortunately. Now, it wasn't a good card. 4 energy, 50 damage, 70 on a coin flip. It's cool. And it's nice, but no. It was never going to be a particularly good card. It was never meant to be a particularly good card. But this was one of the few Dialga, along with the McDonald's promo card, that just never made its way over here. Now fast forward to Platinum in February 2009, where we get 5 new Dialga cards. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. 5 Dialga cards in one set. Little bit over the top if you ask me. So, Platinum number 5, it's got a nice ability. During your turn, when you put Dialga onto your bench, you may search your discard pile for free in any combination of Pokemon, excluding level X, and basic energy. Show them to your opponent and put them on top of your deck in any order. Kind of like a super rod, except you shuffle them. Well, you don't shuffle them in, you just put them on top of your deck instead. That was a nice little ability that a few people did chuck into their decks here and there. And then metal double colourless, 50 damage, draw until you've got 7 in your hand, was a decent attack, bearing in mind it was a bit of draw power as well, although a bit expensive. Diamond and Pearl 6 had a Pokebody. As long as it's in the active, your opponent cannot evolve any of the Pokemon from their hand. And then the attack was a little bit expensive, 100 damage, discard all metal energy for a metal double colourless. Looks pretty good. It just never saw a huge amount of play. There were just too many better Pokemon. And this was in Platinum when a whole bunch of people were playing SP Pokemon, like Luxray for instance. And it was just never useful enough, unfortunately. Little bit sad, but hey ho, ladies and gentlemen. These things happen. And then we got on to Diamond and Pearl 23. 2 energy, 20 damage. Flip a coin. If head, search your discard for a basic and attach it to Dialga. 3 metal, 1 colourless, 100 damage, and it cannot attack next turn. It was alright, but it never saw a huge amount of play. But also in Platinum, we saw Dialga G and Dialga G level X. And these saw a huge amount of play. Now, Dialga G had Deafen for 2 energy. I say 2 energy. It was an SP Pokemon. It had energy gain, so it was basically 1 energy and an energy gain. 10 damage, and it stopped your opponent playing Trainer or Stadium cards. This was back when Trainer meant item. That was pretty gosh darn good. And then the second attack was alright. 50 damage. If it's already got 2 or more damage on it, it does 70, and bearing in mind back then you could easily use Crobat G to put 2 damage on it. And that added up pretty quickly. And then Dialga G level X had a Pokebody, which turned off your opponent's Pokebodies that weren't SP. Really useful for stuff like Vileplume, for instance, that was turning off item cards. And then 80 damage for 4 energy, flip a coin until you get tails. For each head, remove an energy from the defending Pokemon, put it in the lost zone. People played this with special metal energy as a complete tanking Pokemon, bearing in mind you had Garchomp C level X to completely heal it off. And yeah, it was a great Pokemon that saw a huge amount of play, and to this day, Dialga G and Dialga G level X really do remain the gold standard of Dialga Pokemon. Next up, we got a promo Dialga, Diamond and Pearl 49, in the Supreme Victor's poster pack, of all things. And it was, well, like most of these promos, it was not terribly exciting. 1 energy, search for a card that evolves from one of your Pokemon and put it on that Pokemon. Now, we've seen this attack in the past, but bearing in mind this was around about the time when we had Spiritomb. And Spiritomb could do the same thing for 0 energy while blocking item cards, which just made it better, to be perfectly honest. Or flip a coin, metal 2 colourless energy, 100 damage, flip 2 coins in fact. If either are tails, you do 50 rather than 100. It just wasn't a particularly exciting Pokemon. What was a particularly exciting Pokemon, however, was Palkia and Dialga Legend, which came out in Triumphant in November 2010. It was one of these dual Legend cards that was a little bit of a pain, to be perfectly honest. You could only play it if you had both halves of it in your hand and you would play them down together. But it was very interesting. Water double colourless. Choose one of your opponent's bench, put that and all cards attached to it in your opponent's hand. Wasn't terribly exciting. But 2 metal and a colourless. Discard all the metal attached to Palkia and Dialga. Add the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck to their prize cards. People played this, ladies and gentlemen. People played around with this because every time you got this attack off, your opponent had an extra 2 prize cards. I saw people playing this and giving their opponent 20 prize cards. I did see a couple games where people got decked out. just because they had way too many prize cards and they couldn't possibly take them. The fact that it took free energy and you had to discard all the metal was a bit of a pain, which stopped it from being top tier, but it was still fun. What was not fun was the Call of Legends Dialga, released in February 2011, and I did a video about Call of Legends recently. I'll pop it in the description, or a link to it in the description. It came out as a regular and as a secret rare, which is still worth quite a bit of money, and it's utter garbage. Like the worst Dialga on this list. 4 metal energy, 70 damage, shuffle your hand into your deck. 70 for 4 energy sucks. Shuffling your hand into your deck so you have a 0 card hand to start. No! That's rubbish! If Dialga G was the pinnacle of Dialga cards, this is the horrible gaping chasm of despair. We then had a couple of Dialga EXs. The first Dialga EX came around in Plasma Blast and did have a full art version as well. And it was kind of interesting. It was a plasma Pokemon, so you could use stuff like Colress Machine, for instance, to accelerate a little bit of energy on there, or you could use it with Thunderous, for instance, which was kind of cool. And it had a couple of decent attacks. Psychic Metal Colorless, 50 damage, flip a coin if heads, put a card from your discard pile into your hand. That was actually really fun in terms of just recovering resources. But 4 colorless energy, so you can use double colorless and Colress Machine to really speed it up. And for each plasma energy attached to this Pokemon, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Now, it had 180 HP, so it was sticking around for a little while. It was a fun little mill deck. If you could pull off a bunch of Colress Machine early, this could be a really effective milling Pokemon. Good times. Then we got our second Dialga EX in Phantom Forces, and again, it obviously did also get a full art. And Metal Double Colorless, 60 damage. If the defending Pokemon is an EX, it cannot attack during your opponent's next turn. Now, there were way too many ways around this, and you could just switch out of it, etc., etc. But it was still kind of fun as a little tech. And then, for 4 energy, 2 metal, 2 colorless, 150, discard 2 metal energy. And this did see a fair bit of play as a big hitter in a Bronzong deck, where you could just recover the energy and be hitting for at least 150 every turn. Didn't quite have the damage cap of Genesect EX, the metal one, which was the main attacker in Bronzong, but often played as a one-off because it could do a fair amount of damage. We then did see another promo, XY77, and like most of these promos, ladies and gentlemen, it was not particularly good. It came out in the Hooper EX Legendary Collection, and Metal Colorless 30, 2 Metal Colorless 80, and your opponent cannot evolve Pokemon from their hand the next turn, making a little bit of a throwback to the earlier Dialga. Too expensive, didn't do enough damage, I never saw it in a single deck ever. And then fast forward to Dialga GX, which firstly came out as a Dragon type in Ultra Prism, and has just been reprinted this past weekend as a Metal type in Forbidden Light. So I suppose it depends what weakness you want. Although the metal one can go and use down Mize to do a little bit of extra damage, which is kind of interesting. Although they can both use Magnezone to accelerate the energy, which helps. Or indeed Solgaleo Prism Star to accelerate the energy, which also helps. Now, 1 metal energy, draw till you've got 6 cards in your hand, which of course is a throwback to the old Dialga. It's had this attack before. Nice at the beginning of the game if you're drawing nothing. We've got Metal Double Colorless, 80 damage, not affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. And you know what? It's not great, but if you come across something like a Jolteon EX, you're going to be glad you had it. But the real draw here is the GX attack. 3 metal, 2 colorless, so it's very expensive. 150, and you instantly get another turn. Add a choice band to do 180, so you can KO EXs and GXs. If you can take 2 prizes and instantly get another turn, this is going to put you ahead in the game. It's not seen a huge amount of play yet, but it's not been out very long. I expect this Dialga to see a lot of play and go down as one of the best Dialga we've ever had. It's probably not going to be better than Dialga G and Dialga G Level X, the best ones we've ever had, but we will probably never again get a Dialga as pitiful and embarrassing as the one from Call of Legends, which quite frankly sucked. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is every Dialga ever, including the weird McDonald's promo and the Dialga M that we just never got in this country. Boo, hiss, etc. Unless you're watching in Japan, of course, in which case you definitely did get it in your country. Congratulations. So, now it's time for you, ladies and gentlemen. I need some comments from you. Tell me what your favourite Dialga was ever. Tell me about your memories of playing Dialga. And, of course, give me some candidates for the next Every Card Ever video. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods, etc., head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do just that. And do check out my video game /Dragon Ball Super channel, Wassy Plays, for some more Wassy action. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.